When I was in Durham Diocese, my bishop was Tom Wright. If you've heard of him, it's likely that you know him as N.T. Wright. In the UK, his more popular-focused books are published as Tom, the more academic ones as N.T., whereas in North America they're all published as N.T. The great man himself tells of being in a bookshop and overhearing two women talking. "Tom Wright, I like his books." "Yes," agreed the second, "he's much better than that N.T. Wright." A clergy colleague, however, when praying for the bishop in the liturgy, always referred to Thomas, our bishop. To be in Tom Wright's presence made one feel one had been in the presence of God. I am the great I am. He could be quite critical of the Revised Common Lectionary, particularly the bits it left out. In his estimation, those were usually bits that referred to sex or violence. It would be a revealing exercise to mark up a Bible with the lectionary readings and find out which parts are never due to be read. Tom Wright inherited John Pritchard under him as suffragan Bishop of Jarrow. It would have been interesting to have been a fly on the wall to their conversations. In 2005, John Pritchard acted as consultant to the 100-Minute Bible, which, quote, picks out the essential elements of the Christian scriptures. I invested $6.39 to discover how the 100-Minute Bible dealt with our passage. It was as I'd suspected. Jesus then gave another loud cry and died. And at that very moment, the curtain dividing the Holy of Holies from the rest of the temple building was torn in two. When the Roman officer who had supervised the execution saw how Jesus had died, he said, "This man was really God's son." Do you see what's left out? The latter part of verse 51 and all of verses 52 and 53. The earth shook, the rocks split, the tombs broke open, and the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs, and after Jesus' resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many people. Okay, it's a 100-minute Bible, and you can't include everything, although John Pritchard's preface does say, unlike the traditional Bible, 3/4 of which is devoted to the centuries before Christ, this version centres on Christ's life and impact on society. This is simply because the key to unlocking the Bible is Jesus Christ. It's as if he is the great explosion that happened in the centre of history, and the Bible is a record of its impact. So, on this basis, there should be more room for explosive events associated with Jesus, and an earthquake, rocks splitting, and dead people coming to life do seem to fit that bill. I wonder how many sermons you've heard that major on verses 51 to 53. It's likely that you've heard mention of the curtain of the temple being torn in two from top to bottom. Even the 100-Minute Bible includes that. But was that seen primarily for its symbolism? that Jesus gains access to the Holy of Holies, doing away with the old sacrificial system. Is there a tendency to regard the sheer physicality of the dead coming out of tombs as rather like a relative the family is ashamed of, the black sheep of the family? We don't talk about her. In 1799, Friedrich Schleiermacher, he was a German, wrote on religion speeches to its cultured despisers. The cultured despisers were Schleiermacher's friends. He wanted to make Christianity more palatable to them. He was a never mind the width, feel the quality kind of Christian apologist. There are bits of Christianity you don't like? That's okay. Just concentrate on the parts you can digest. That's enough. Schleiermacher provided a significant theological basis for this kind of thinking, and it's been going on ever since. But actually, it's wrong to think of this as just a post-Enlightenment occurrence. We can trace it back to the ancient Greeks and their philosophers. Paul wrote, "We preach Christ crucified, to the Jews a stumbling block, and to the Greeks foolishness. But to them which are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God." 1 Corinthians 1, verses 23 and 24. A major tussle went on in the early Christian church as it spread to embrace Greek speakers, Gentiles, people like you and me. On the one hand, it was agreed that the Gentiles didn't have to become Jewish. They didn't have to adopt Jewish ceremonial law. But, on the other hand, Christianity remained true to its Judeo roots. And this includes an emphasis on physicality against the Greek tendency to spiritualize everything. Article 4 of the 39 Articles of Religion of the Resurrection of Christ states, "Christ did truly rise again from death, and took again his body with flesh, bones, and all things appertaining to the perfection of man's nature, wherewith he ascended into heaven, and there sitteth until he return to judge all men at the last day." This was included for the same reason that most things in the creeds were, because there were people, even back in the 16th century, who were denying this truth. The 100-Minute Bible includes the fact that from midday darkness fell until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that at the moment Jesus died, the temple curtain was torn in two. These are remarkable physical occurrences consistent with the intervention in the cosmos that the death of Jesus represented. For me, it's entirely consistent for this to be accompanied by the events Matthew records: an earthquake, rock splitting, and the bodies of many holy people being raised to life. Why might one deny this occurred? Is God incapable of doing this? If so, he's a pretty puny God And this isn't consistent with all the other remarkable things going on. What's more, the Old Testament shows that God delights in physical intervention. We can go back to our creation, when God uses clay to make us. He makes use of a rainbow, parts the Red Sea, speaks from a burning bush, provides manna to eat and brings forth water from a rock. Now, I could go on. Our God is a God of physical intervention. And that is what we have to look forward to. A final physical intervention at the end of time as we know it, at Jesus' return, when we shall be raised. British artist Stanley Spencer tried to picture this with his painting depicting the general resurrection of the dead in the churchyard at Cookham, the Berkshire village where he lived. Ours will be a physical resurrection, just as Jesus was. C.S. Lewis writes in his book, Mere Christianity, "There is no good trying to be more spiritual than God. God never meant man to be a purely spiritual creature. That is why he uses material things like bread and wine to put the new life into us. We may think this rather crude and unspiritual. God does not. He invented eating. He likes matter. He invented it." And he continues, "Christianity is almost the only one of the great religions which thoroughly approves of the body, which believes that matter is good, that God himself once took on a human body, that some kind of body is going to be given to us, even in heaven, and is going to be an essential part of our happiness, our beauty, and our energy. God chose to come in human form in the person Jesus Christ. He took on flesh and, post-resurrection, took that flesh with him at his ascension into heaven. As Lewis puts it, God uses material things like bread and wine to put new life into us at Holy Communion. We enter his church through the water of baptism. If Jesus does not return before I die, I look forward to my physical resurrection after restful sleep, as I hope you too look forward to yours. Happy Easter. Amen.